Section 3, Classical Greece. Classical Greece is the name given to the period of Greek history from around 500 BC to the conquest of Greece by the Macedonian king Philip II in 338 BC. This period was marked not only a brilliant culture, but also by a disastrous war among the Greeks, the Peloponnesian War. The challenge of Persia. The Greek states of Athens and Sparta formed alliances to defeat the Persian invaders. As the Greeks spread throughout the Mediterranean, they came in contact with the Persian Empire to the east. The Ionian Greek cities in western Asia Minor had fallen to the Persian Empire by the mid-6th century BC. In 499 BC, an unsuccessful revolt by the Ionian cities assisted by the Athenian navy led the Persian ruler Darius to seek revenge. It is said that Darius ordered one of his slaves to say him at every meal, "Sir, remember the Athenians." So Darius is also known as Darius the Great. He was the third Persian king of kings in Achaemenid Empire, reigning from 522 BC until his death in 486 BC. Known po siya for his administrative genius and for his great building projects. He attempted to conquer the Greeks several times. After Darius died in 486 BC, Xerxes became the new Persian monarch. Xerxes vowed revenge and planned to invade Greece. In preparation for the attack, some of the Greek states formed a defensive league under the Spartans. The Athenians, however, followed a new military policy insisted on by Themistocles, one of Athenian leaders, and built a navy by the time of Persians invaded in 480 BC. The Athenians had a fleet of about 200 vessels. So, Xerxes, mauna siya ang eldest son ng Darius and Atosa. Before he became the successor of Darius, he contested with the succession of his elder half-brother Artabarzanes. Now, he is known as a tyrant and oppressive ruler too. With the goal of defeating Persian invaders, the Greeks tried to delay the Persians at the pass of Thermopylae along the main road into central Greece. A Greek force of about 7,000 held off the Persian army for 2 days. The 300 Spartans in the Greek army were especially brave. When told that Persian arrows would darken the sky in battle, one Spartan responded, "That is good news. We will fight in the shade." Unfortunately, a traitor told the Persians how to use a mountain path to outflank the Greek force. The Athenians, now threatened by the arrival of Persian forces, abandoned their city near the island of Salamis. The Greek fleet, though outnumbered, managed to defeat the Persians. A few months later, early in 479 BC, the Greeks formed the largest Greek army up to that time and defeated the Persian army at Plataea, northwest of Athens. Pericles expands Athenian democracy. Pericles was a prominent political leader in Athens from 461 BC to 429 BC. During this time, he expanded the Athenian democracy to enable all citizens to play a role in government. In his famous speech, the funeral oration, giving honor to those who perished in Athens' war with Sparta, Pericles describes the Greek ideal of democracy. Our constitution does not copy the laws of neighboring states. We are rather a pattern to others than imitators ourselves. Its administration favors the many instead of the few. This is why it is called democracy. If we look to the laws, they afford equal justice to all in their private differences. If no social standing, advancement in public life falls of reputation for capacity, class considerations, not being allowed to interfere with merit, nor again does poverty bar the way. The freedom which we enjoy in our government extends also to our ordinary life. We do not feel called upon to be angry with our neighbor for doing what he likes. But all this is in our private relations does not make us lawless as citizens. Against this fear is our chief safeguard, teaching us to obey the magistrates and the laws. Pericles as quoted in History of the Philippination War, Book 2. The Athenian Empire. During the age of Pericles, Athens became the center Greek of culture. After the defeat of the Persian, Athens took over the leadership of the entire Greek world. In 478 BC, the Athenians formed a defensive alliance against the Persians known as the Delian League. Its main headquarters was on the island of Delos. However, its chief officials, including the treasurers and commanders of the fleet, were Athenian. Under the Athenian leadership, the Delian League pursued the attack against the Persian Empire, eventually liberating virtually all the Greek states in the Aegean from Persian control. In 454 BC, the Athenians moved to the treasury of the League from the island of Delos to Athens, the mainland. By controlling the Delian League, Athens had created an empire. Under Pericles, a dominant figure in Athenian politics between 461 and 429 BC, Athens expanded its empire abroad while democracy flourished at home. This period of classical Athenian and Greek history, which historians have called the Age of Pericles, saw the height of Athenian power and brilliance. Next, the Age of Pericles. By creating a direct democracy, Pericles expanded the involvement of Athenians in their democracy. In such system, every male citizen participates directly in government decision-making through mass meetings. In Athens, every male citizen participated in the governing assembly and voted on all major issues. Every 10 days, the assembly met on a hillside east of the Acropolis. The assembly passed all laws, elected and public officials, and made decisions concerning war and foreign policy. Anyone attending the assembly could speak, but usually only respected leaders did so. Pericles made it possible for poor citizens to take part in public affairs by paying office holders. Daily life in classical Athens. By the 5th century BC, Athens had the largest population of the Greek city-states. Before the Plaki, in 430 BC, there were about 150,000 citizens living in Athens. About 43,000 of them were adult males with political power. Most residents of Athens were not citizens. Foreigners living in Athens, who numbered about 35,000, received the protection of the laws. They were also subject to some of the responsibilities of citizens, military service, and the funding of festivals. Slaves numbered around 100,000. Slavery was common in the ancient world. Most people in Athens, except the very poor, owned at least one slave. The very wealthy might own large numbers. Those who did usually employed them in industry. Most often, Slaves worked in the fields or in the home as cooks and maids. Some slaves were owned by the state and worked in public construction projects. Economy and society. The Athenian economy was largely based on farming and trade. Athenians grew grains, vegetables, and fruit for local use. Grapes and olive trees were cultivated for wine and olive oil, which were used locally and also exported. Athenians raised sheep and goats for wool, milk, and dairy products. Because of the number of people and the lack of fertile land, Athens had to import from 50 to 80% of its grain, a basic item in the Athenian diet. This meant that trade was highly important to the Athenian economy. The building of a port at nearby Piraeus helped Athens become the leading trade center in the 5th century BC. The family was an important institution in ancient Athens. It was composed of a husband, wife, and children, although Athenians also regarded other dependent relatives and even slaves as parts of their families. The family's primary function was to produce new citizens by having children. Women who were citizens could take part in most religious festivals, but otherwise were excluded from public life. They were expected to remain at home out of sight in special quarters unless attending funerals and festivals. If they left the house, women could have a companion. An Athenian woman was expected to be a good wife. Her chief obligation was to bear children, especially male children who would preserve the family line. She was also expected to take care of her family and her house. She either did the housework herself or supervised the slaves who did the work. Women were strictly controlled. Women could not own property other than personal items. They always had a male guardian if unmarried, a father, if married, a husband, if widowed, a son or male relative. Because they married at 14 or 15, girls learned their responsibilities early. Their mothers taught them how to run a home, including how to spin and weave cloth. Although many learned to read and play musical instruments, girls were not provided with any formal education. Women did not work outside the home unless they were poor. Then they could only work at unskilled jobs, not skilled trades. Next, the Great Philippination War. The creation of an Athenian Empire led to tensions with Sparta and eventually war. After the defeat of the Persians, the Greek world came to be divided into two major camps, the Athenian Empire and Sparta and its supporters. Athens and Sparta had built two very different kinds of societies, and neither state was able to tolerate other system. Sparta and its allies feared the growing Athenian Empire, and a series of disputes finally led to the outbreak of the Great Philippination War in 431 BC. At the beginning of the war, the both sides believed that they had winning strategies. The Athenians planned to remain behind the city's protective walls and receive the supplies from their colonies and navy. The Spartans and their allies surrounded Athens, hoping that the Athenians would send out their army to fight beyond the walls. Pericles knew, however, that the Spartan forces could beat the Athenians in open battles. The Athenians had a better navy, but the Spartans had a stronger army. Pericles also believed that the Athens was secure behind its walls, so the Athenians stayed. In the first winter of the war, the Athenians held a public funeral to honor those who had died in combat. Pericles spoke about the greatness of Athens and strength of its political system. In the second year of the war, a plague broke out in the overly crowded city of Athens. The plague killed more than a third of people. Pericles himself died the following year on 429 BC. Despite these severe losses, the Athenians fought in the struggle that lasted for about another 25 years. A crashing blow to the Athenians came in 405 BC when their fleet was destroyed at Egopostami on the Hellespont. Within the next year, Athens surrendered. Its walls were torn down, the navy disbanded, and the Athenian Empire were destroyed. The Great War was finally over. The Great Philippination War weakened the major Greek states and ruined any possibility of cooperation among them. During the next 66 years, Sparta, Athens, and Thebes, a new Greek power, struggled to dominate Greek affairs. In continuing their petty wars, the Greeks ignored the growing power of Macedonia to their north. This oversight would cost them their freedom.